Toward the beginning of the 21st century, a third world war breaks out and crushes the world. The excess survivors found Libria, a city where an extremist government known as the Tetragrammaton Council makes all residents take everyday infusions of prosium 2, which smothers feeling and supports submission. Whatever might invigorate feelings like craftsmanship and pets have been prohibited, and those criminals that really do consume those things are designated sense offenders in the event that they get found out. They're killed in light of the fact that the council asserts the people who feel are the reason for all conflicts. To ensure that everybody observes these regulations, the council formed a gathering of thoroughly prepared warriors known as clerics, who battle utilizing the military specialty of firearm customized organization. Outside the city, there is an unwanted area called the Nether, where the majority of the criminal behavior occurs. Right now, clerics John and Errol along with their extraordinary group are directing a strike to manage the most recent gathering of rebels from a gathering known as the Underground. The group finds that a bundle of rebels are blockading themselves inside a building, so while they take part in a gunfight outside, John goes inside first with weapons in quite a while hands. He breaks the entryway and simply pauses there in the haziness, allowing the rebels to fire, not getting hurt even once. When the fire stops, John utilizes his weapon to shoot every one of the rebels, utilizing the firearm techniques which utilizes geometry and brain science to pick where to hit with accuracy and permits him to be out of the line of fire. When everybody is dead, they search the building for unlawful material, and when they break the flooring sections, they find a collection of craftsmanship that incorporates the Mona Lisa. After they utilize a scanner to affirm they're genuine, John arranges his men to set everything ablaze. On their ride back to base camp, John sees that Errol took a book and asks him for what valid reason. Errol makes sense of that the group will in general abandon some things, so he'll log this proof himself to remain generally safe with the records. In the meantime in the city, the leader father shows up on screens wherever, reminding individuals to take prosium and that they've accomplished harmony because of the system, which gets him a cheer from the general population. Father generally shows up on the screens, yet no one has seen him face to face for a long of time. When John shows up at base camp, he quickly goes to see Vice Consul DuPont to give his report, which procures him high recognition. DuPont considers how a cleric has advanced so well to detect when somebody feels compelling feelings, so John makes sense of he's learned for think like his adversaries. Then DuPont gets some information about his family, and John briskly lets him know that his wife was captured and burned for being a sense wrongdoer quite a while back. DuPont admonishes him as far as it might be concerned, saying a cleric ought to have the option to tell his own wife is a criminal. Thereafter, John checks out a recording of the vehicle and notification Errol acting dubiously. He goes to take a gander at the records and finds Errol hasn't been logging any sort of proof for quite a long time, including the present book. He chooses to get back to the Nether to search for himself and finds him perusing the book inside abandoned church. At the point when John faces him, Errol mourns that individuals have lost all that makes them human. And when John calls attention to that there is no war or murder now, Errol concedes that he'd happily address the cost to cause people to feel feelings once more. Then, at that point, Errol attempts to go after his weapon. However, John is quicker and kills him first. Prior to leaving, he covers Errol's face with the book. A while later, John meets Brant, who will supplant Errol as his accomplice and expresses his desires to become as great as John. At the point when John returns home, his son Robbie lets him know that he saw a kid crying before and ponders, assuming he ought to illuminate the authorities. So John says he ought to, despite the fact that they're father and son. Robbie calls out to John by him rather than dad. Later at night, arresting John longs for the day his wife was captured. When the officials burst into his home, John immediately incapacitated two of them. Yet, he quit battling when they let him know his wife was a sense wrongdoer. On out, his wife kissed him and asked him not to fail to remember her while their two children watched. The following morning, while preparing, John inadvertently drops his vial of prosium on the floor and it breaks. When Robbie sees this, he reminds his father to come by the Equilibrium Center to get a substitution. Anyway, when John shows up at the middle, he finds that it's briefly shut in light of the fact that of psychological oppressor movement and that individuals should go to the middle in one more area to get their stockpile. At that point, Brant comes to get him for a mission, so John chooses to go with him without informing him regarding his absence of the present prosium. Then John and Brant go to see a lady named Mary. Furthermore, strike her home. John pushes Mary against the mirror, however he freezes when he's helped to remember his wife. Fortunately, he recuperates quick, and after Brant obliterates the mirror in view of its creative edge, the officials wreck a wall to find a room loaded up with illegal items. A frantic Mary takes a firearm from an officer and points it at John, so Brant attempts to shoot her. Anyway, John stops him, saying they can utilize her to get data about the underground. A while later, Mary is taken to base camp for cross-examination. John gets some information about different rebels. In any case, Mary disregards the inquiries and on second thought posed to John about his motivation for living. John says his object is to keep their general public running great, yet Mary brings up that it's circular rationale. His motivation is simply living to proceed with his reality. Prior to leaving, John watches the preparing of the volunteers to reassure he. That evening, John does his infusion and watches how Errol's body is burned. But he awakens acknowledging it was a bad dream, feeling weird. He hurries to the window and strips away the color on the glass, permitting him to watch the dawn interestingly. Such a delightful sight causes him to feel bunches of feelings like wonderment. And when he, understanding this, he hurries to the washroom to snatch the needle gun. Anyway, he can't bring himself to get the infusion once more. Then, John leaves for work, yet prior to entering base camp, he drops a lot of prosium vials on the ground to obliterate them. He additionally removes his glove and brushes his hand against someone else just to know how it feels. In the office, he sees all work areas are the very same and starts improving his things. Brant sees this and asks him what's happening. However, John lets him know that he's simply streamlining his space. Their next mission is to pursue some sense guilty parties in the Nether. As they strike the spot, the officers stall out in a horrendous gunfight against the rebels. A man attempts to go after John, so Brant shoots the person. When John gets the person, he incidentally gazes at him and sees life leave the body. Irritated about the things he's seeing now, he quickly drops the body, just to feel more terrible when he sees the guilty conscience. While the officers kill every one of the rebels, John finds a mystery room loaded up with illegal things and chooses to investigate. He finds a vinyl record of Beethoven's Ninth Orchestra and plays it while taking a gander at a snow globe. However, as when he hears the music, he's moved to the point that he drops the globe and begins to cry. A while later, the group torches everything and Brant sees John is keeping a book. Recalling Errol, John simply says he'll log it himself. Out of nowhere, an officer reports they've discovered a few animals, which end up being little dogs. Not even one of them comprehend the reason why somebody would keep animals in the house and even keep thinking about whether the rebels ate them. Brant arranges the officers to kill every one of the dogs. Furthermore, John attempts to protest, yet he can't imagine a valid justification, so he needs to second the request. As the team shoots each dog with no kindness, one of the little dogs figures out how to get away and hurries to John, who gets it and is stunned to have his face licked. An officer attempts to take it back to complete the task, however John takes it, saying it ought to be tried for sicknesses. In a little while, John has a meeting with DuPont and contends against the homicide of rebels, bringing up that they ought to be captured and investigated rather as the law says. Anyway, DuPont informs him that Father has delivered a command requesting officers to kill all radicals immediately. Thereafter, John watches Mary for some time and chooses to request the box with her assets. In addition to other things, he tracks down a ribbon, and subsequent to smelling it, he chooses to keep it. At night, he goes to the Nether, ignorant that Brant is following him. When there, John attempts to deliver the dog. Yet, since it won't quit following him, he returns it to the trunk. John even gives it his coat also, grins at the little man. At that point, officers show up at the area and encompass him as they request an ID, which John left in his jacket. They take the vehicle keys from him and are going to open the trunk, just for an officer to perceive John and apologize for the difficulty. Sadly, the doggy utilizes the second to howl, so the officers open the trunk, and when they see the animals, they cause John to get kneeling down. Anyway, John goes after the officers, utilizing their own weapons to kill them. There are more men holding up in the vehicles, so John assaults them also, utilizing a similar method to take their weapons and kill them all in a flash. Then, he leaves with the little dog. The following morning, John chooses to conceal his vials of prosium behind the washroom mirror prior to going to work. Today he'll prepare with his sword, and Brant drops by to go along with him, beginning a cordial battle. Their abilities are practically on a similar level, and as they proceed to trade blows, Brant continues to insult John, saying he realizes John can't quit thinking about the puzzling murders in the Nether. He says he's happy those officers are dead because presently the committee will arrange a speed increase on the loss of rebels. The battle closes in a tie, and afterward the pair passes on to strike another area in the Nether, while the team search the area and taken part in another gunfight. John goes over a lot of revolutionaries, however advises them to leave. The rebels dread that John will shoot them toward the back, so he needs to lead them down a passage to view as a spot to stow away. Before long they start experiencing officers, however John battles them all without wavering, allowing the rebels an opportunity to get away. After a furious battle during which he kills all, John goes searching for the rebels, just to find they've been gotten. Brant says he realized John would carry the rebels to him. Then he requests that he shoot them all, in any event, giving John his own weapon to make it happen. John takes it, and after some delay, he gives the firearm back to Brant, saying it will be better for him to clutch his own weapon. Then, Brant arranges the officers to kill every one of the rebels, so John passes on the space to have the option to keep up a virus face. In a little while, John visits DuPont to let him know that he's prepared to become Father's instrument against the opposition, so DuPont gives him the mission to annihilate the underground. Then, John goes to the mortuary to apologize to Errol's body for questioning him. He likewise looks at Errol's assets and finds he had a ton of pictures. The one with freedom on it stands out. He surges to see Mary to get some information about Errol. and when she denies knowing him, John uncovers the picture, which shows Mary and Errol had been together. Since Mary actually won't talk, John tells her he killed Errol, making Mary snatch a pen and hop on him to wound him. John obstructs the assault prior to sticking her down and tenderly touching her face, being impacted by her face since he's helped to remember his wife. In the wake of taking a gander at the picture and the word composed on it, John recollects a spot called Freedom Reading Room wherein teacher peruses the statement to young fellows. John visits the spot also, throws every one of the understudies out prior to undermining the instructor until he discovers that Errol came frequently here to meet with a man named Jurgen. Getting a thought, John separates the racks by tossing the teacher against them and goes over Jurgen, who says the rebels have been watching John. A while later, Jurgen takes John to the underground, where rebels are leaving well enough alone life loaded up with delightful articles. John is placed on a polygraph to ensure his inclination feelings, and when Jurgen notices to Mary, the polygraph machine goes off the deep end. Jurgen concedes he realizes John has Mary's ribbon and lets him know his sentiments may be fulfilled in the event that he permits himself to succumb to her. However, John calls attention to that Mary will be burned the following day. Then, John thinks about what he can do for the opposition. So Jurgen requests that he kill Father. When John leaves the underground, he's encircled by guards and taken to DuPont, who says he heard gossipy tidbits about a cleric who halted taking prosium. Then he asks John what he's been doing of late, to which John answers he's been endeavoring to contact the rebels and vows to try harder. Some other time when he returns home, John leaves one more vial inside the mirror and watches his youngsters rest. Inquisitive, he snatches his child's needle box, just for Robbie to awaken and ask him what he's doing. John makes sense of that he's just ensuring that Robbie has been taking his everyday portion. Then Robbie returns to rest, but he stuns John by referring to him as father. The following day, John goes to at last see Mary and she acknowledges he hasn't been taking his infusions. She can see that John is feeling lost and befuddled, so she contacts his hand to offer some solace. Thereafter, John meets with Jurgen to make sense of that killing Father is unthinkable on the grounds that no one has been permitted to see him in years. Anyway, Jurgen says that John is prepared for this and commitments that assuming John gets Father, the rebels will be prepared to obliterate all the prosium labs around the city. When everybody is feeling once more, then human instinct will win their battle. John consents to attempt, and before he leaves, Jurgen cautions him not to observe Mary's execution since it'll just make it harder for John. When John gets back to the office, he closes up seeing the groundwork for the execution on the screens, and this rouses him to search for the film of his own wife's demise. John feels terrible when he sees himself on the video, not having a single response over the reality his better half was being scorched alive. Needing to compensate for his slip-up, John races to the cremation space to save Mary. Sadly, when he arrives, Mary is as of now inside the chamber and the machine turbines have proactively been begun. They can't be opened now since, in such a case that they are, the turbines will cause a blast in the city. John attempts his best to keep down his tears as Mary dies, yet at last he can't withstand anything else and runs outside to have a breakdown. At that point, Brandt captures him and subsequent to pounding him before everybody, he takes him to DuPont. Brandt says that John has been associated with Mary and that he was the person who killed the officers in the Nether. But John reminds DuPont about his central goal to uncover the traitor among the clerics and guarantee that Brandt is the man they're searching for. DuPont continues to check the firearm that killed the officers and it seems, by all accounts, to be Brandt's weapon. Confounded, Brandt takes a gander at the weapon he's conveying and finds it's John's since he exchanged them a few evenings ago. To cover this up, John tells DuPont that Brandt took his gun when he captured him. DuPont orders the men to remove Brandt for judgment. However, he likewise illuminates John that the law actually expects for a group to look through his home. John claims to be fine with this and remarks that he's disheartened that he hasn't as yet met Father in spite of being an instrument for the obliteration of the underground. A short time later, John runs back home to take the secret vials. Yet when he moves the mirror and finds the space vacant, at that point Robbie uncovers he took the vials before the officers could track down them to protect his father, and admits he and his sister have halted taking their infusions since their mom's demise. John gives them his approval, previously leaving. Minutes after the fact, John gets together with the rebels to begin an arrangement. He calls the committee and illuminates them he's situated in the underground. Before long, the officers come to capture every one of the rebels, and John is viewed as a legend deserving of meeting with Father. Upon the arrival of the gathering, the council makes John go through a test first. They make him hand in his weapons and interface him to a polygraph prior to asking him for the least demanding method for removing a weapon from a cleric. Out of nowhere, Brandt appears. What's more, murmurs you ask him for it. Then Father shows up on a screen, making sense of that Brandt's capture was essential for an old arrangement. For quite a long time, Father has been attempting to invade the underground. In any case, he understood that he wanted a man who might think and feel like the rebels. Father says John was the main man who could do that prior to uncovering his genuine face. It turns out he's DuPont, who has been utilizing accounts to conceal the reality. The genuine dad died a long while back. The committee chosen him to supplant father and proceed with his customs. Angry over being deceived this way, John takes out the firearms he concealed in his sleeves and starts taking shots at everybody, utilizing his extraordinary ability to kill them all in a flash. Then, at that point, John lets DuPont know that he's coming for himself and later shooting the screen. He passes on the space to go on a killing binge, shooting each and every guard that considers holding him up and leaves a slaughter on his way. At the point when he at last arrives at DuPont, Brandt is there as the protector. John continues to kill a few additional guards prior to pursuing Brandt, who snatches a sword so they can battle appropriately, not at all like their preparation. This time John battles truly and with only a couple of speedy strikes. He kills Brandt by removing his face. Then, DuPont gets a weapon and assaults John, who takes a firearm from a dead guard and quickly shields himself. DuPont is an incredible contender and at first can stay aware of John. However, soon John overwhelms him and losses him as he takes his firearm. Frantic to get by, DuPont asks for kindness and admits that he likewise feels feelings, but John actually shoots him in the head without thinking twice. Previously leaving the structure, John obliterates the machines broadcasting father's messages. This is viewed as a sign by the rebels, who promptly begin besieging the prosium processing plants all over the city. Presently local people can comprehend that now is the right time to battle against the system. The end. If you like this story, please subscribe to the channel and like it to motivate me to bring you more stories like this.